Right then, welcome back to Five Things. Oh, number one, speechless. It was a real inept performance. One that lacked heart, desire, impetus. And probably more importantly, like it lacked a bit of a change of pace. When one of the difficulties that you get when a team comes and plays a low block against you is you can get on this kind of carousel of passing the ball around, and it gets very difficult to change that tempo. And sometimes you need a tempo setter. Now, some games get a little bit end to end. The Wolves game, Nottingham Forest tend to be able to make a game end to end, and you need people who can set a tempo, and that's not always quickening the tempo. Sometimes you need someone who can slow it down, control a game, and actually start to own the ball and make smarter decisions with it. Literally, sometimes slowing it down. It's all about how you dictate the tempo. And United's tempo against Palace was a little bit monotone. And I think because it was a little bit monotone, that was one of the reasons that we struggled. We didn't have the ability to take it up a gear and smash them. So that's something that we have to bring in, I think. There was a little bit of a lack of identity. Now, sometimes I'm trying to be as real on this one as I possibly can. And sometimes the opposition has a massive hand in what goes on, and we forget that. And when a team comes on low blocks, it can make it incredibly difficult for you to find an opening. And if you score an early goal, then you've got something to protect and fight for. They don't often protect when it's 0-0 or they're losing 1-0. So giving them a 1-0 advantage really plays into the hands of an opposition that's going to do that sort of stuff. It's been an absolute nightmare start to the Premier League season. Worst start for 34 years. And even though we were better in possession, there was still a sloppiness about United. And it needs picking up in a big way. Number two, Marcus had a nightmare. And he wasn't the only one, but it seemed to be the one. Here's the thing. If you're not scoring goals, you've got to add something elsewhere in there. And his body language looks a little bit off. And I would say this season, he's been a little too selfish. And I don't know if that's because he's like, I got to score as many as I did last season. I don't know if he's set himself personal goals and he's like, I got to hit those sort of numbers that I hit last season. His ball retention was poor. You're not too bothered about that if they're creating chances for other people, but if you're not, then you can be. He didn't exactly have a load of opportunities himself, but he didn't create any opportunities really for himself. Decision making's been poor, and that leads into being a little bit selfish. There's been numerous times this season where the better option is a pass, and he's decided to take an extra touch to free himself up for a shot. And I think there's a quandary here, because on one hand, you want your forwards to be selfish. Ruud van Nistelrooy would rather you spit in his face than pass you a ball. But the team has to come first. And if you're not scoring and the team ain't winning. Now, if the team's 3-0 up and you ain't scored, people are going to be a little bit more sympathetic about you trying to get your goal and you trying to sort your confidence out and you trying to get back in the numbers. But when the team is dysfunctional, and one of the reasons the team is dysfunctional is because maybe your body language isn't quite right, maybe your pressing isn't quite right, maybe your chance creation and teamwork isn't quite right, you got to strip it back to basics. Start with outworking the opposition. That starts with everything. Start with outworking the opposition. Start with being a player for the team, and then you will get your rewards on the other side of that. And that's not what's happened with Marcus this season. Don't know the reason why, but I do have the confidence he'll turn it round. He's played out of position for a few weeks at the start of the season. He's back on the left now. I do expect him to kick into gear, but he really fucking needs to kick into gear. All right, let's get to the point. Big thanks to Surfshark for sponsoring this video. What's Surfshark? It's one of them VPN things. What's a VPN thing? Well, basically, it scrambles up all your online stuff so no nosy parkers can have a gander what you're up to. So whether you're sat in a cafe nicking a Wi-Fi or if you're just at home browsing, Surfshark has got your back. Plus, fancy trick, it can make it look like you're browsing from somewhere else, which is really handy if you're trying to get a sneak peek at the Premier League while you're on some random holiday on some random island, probably in the Mediterranean, right? A few more things. It blocks ads. It doesn't spy on what you're up to, and one account can go across all your gadgets. Give it a whirl, and if you use the code Howson, they're going to chuck in 3 months extra for free. And if you're not feeling it, they've got a 30-day money-back guarantee. Sorted. Number 3, Ten Hag's pressure. Now, you're Manchester United manager, and you lose games, and that means people come for you. And I saw some absolute wibble on Twitter yesterday. Second season has a little bit less leeway than a debut season. You need to start seeing results. It is a results business. And it's interesting how people don't want to talk about the factors at play here. The situation with Sancho, the situation with Anthony. Neither was in the squad yesterday. You know, either might have provided a bit of an impetus. Almost £200 million worth of player not allowed to be featured. Obviously, you got Greenwood, over £200 million worth of player with Greenwood. So you've got that situation. You've got the fact that Amrabat is making his first Premier League start and hasn't really had a lot of time with the team. You're seeing Højlund still finding his feet in there. You've had Casemiro be poor. You've only got one first-choice defender. These are factors that impact. Why aren't we seeing our style of play? Why aren't we seeing our identity? No, I've mentioned at the top of the show, we're not seeing our identity. You know, there isn't Manchester United. There isn't what we saw from Ten Hag last season in a team this season. But there's a difference between me saying, look, we're not seeing that, and me kicking off and screaming, get rid of the fucking manager. I'm not going to say that. Not when there's such absolute catastrophes and carnage happening at the club. I tweeted patience a couple of times. People was like, well, how long are you going to be patient for? Like, well, more than a couple of fucking weeks, mate. Honestly. It took Fergie nearly 7 years to win a title. And if it takes Fergie 7 years, and people are like, why are you always talking about Fergie? And you're like, well, because if the greatest of all time took 7 years to turn around this behemoth of a team, why would you expect anybody who's not Fergie to do it quicker? When you look at, people go, oh, look at the job De Zerbi's doing, forgetting the fact that he lost 6-1 yesterday, by the way. Look at the job De Zerbi's doing. Right, how did De Zerbi get that job, by the way? Oh, because Graham Potter had been taken away by Chelsea. So did he walk into a club that required changing? No. He walked into a club that was really well run, and then he's taken it to another level. Could he come into a club that's in turmoil and turn it round? We don't know. You certainly don't know if he could do it at United. Is he capable of losing 6-1? Well, we fucking know he's capable of doing that against Aston Villa of all teams. You know, look at Arteta. Arteta was allowed to finish 8th and 8th back-to-back. Oh, and then he finished 5th and suddenly everyone thinks he's fucking amazing. Have some fucking patience. These things take multiple windows. People talk about how much he spent. It's not about how much he spent. It's about how many players he's been able to bring into the first team. And then the other circumstances that have been going around in that as well. It's a joke that he's under pressure. He needs to galvanise his players. We've just started to see him do a little bit of rotation. Obviously it didn't work. But that doesn't mean never do that again. That means stick to what you're good at. Big game against Galatasaray on Tuesday. United need 3 points. Simple as that. Number 4, right wing problem. And I'm not talking about this country. United. So, I mean, this is the same thing that's happening with Rashford. Garnacho started the first couple of games of the season on the left wing, and he was shit, right? And people have forgot. It was only a month ago, but people have already forgot that Garnacho stunk the place out starting on the left. Palestri's had a couple of opportunities to start on the right-hand side, and he isn't ready to start. Perhaps he's not ready to start against a team that's going to low block. Maybe against a team that's going to give you a little bit of space in behind. Palestri might be a bit of an option. But in the circumstances we saw yesterday, he isn't the answer. You know, he's not a creator. He's someone that's going to get him as an inside forward for himself. Rashford isn't someone that's going to create for everybody else. He's getting in there for himself. Anthony and Sancho do link the player up a little bit better. they're not going to feature. Or certainly Sancho's not going to feature. Antony's up in the air, I'm not even sure. It seems like United are able to fix one problem and find another. It's incredible. I'm going to start advocating for Mount or Bruno to start featuring off that right-hand side. Give us something. You've got a guy who can do stuff in the box. Get the ball to him. That I thought was a massive issue against Crystal Palace, is how infrequently we got opportunities inside the box. Against a team with a low block, you've got to move the ball forward into the right areas faster. You're not going to have the luxury of taking your time to get there, because by the time you get there, they're already set, and now you can't do anything. And let's try and end on a positive, because otherwise, what are we doing, man? You know what I mean? It's hard enough as it is. Positives. Haaland was starved of service, but it's clear he's good, and he's got it, and I think he'll score a lot of goals. Varane, good to see him looking like he's going to be close to his best. Even Mount, I thought, on the ball, certainly looked good. Dalot getting forward and supplying stuff, that was nice. The Premier League's very competitive at the moment, and if you've got 3 or 4 misfiring in a team, you really start to suffer. And you can lose games. Losing at home to Palace is a fucking absolute volley in the dick. It can't be allowed to continue. We've got to sort that. Anyway, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Bang them in the comments. See you in a bit. Hey, thank you for watching the video. If you are new around these parts, then don't forget to subscribe. My channel is proudly supported by my community on Patreon. If you'd like to get a little bit of extra content, a Discord group, meetups, 5-a-side games, weekly podcasts, behind the scenes, and even an occasional bit of transfer news as and when I get it, then for the price of a pint, you can show your appreciation for the content that we make and get some goodies for doing so as well. Check the link in the description or click the button right here. You'll also find all of my socials here too if you want to follow me on any of those platforms. Nice one.